konnichiwa. Namaste, Sodikap. And this is my session, Dance with Waterfall and Agile. And I'm going to give you the introduction for session first. I want to tell you in this session, I will introduce you how companies, individuals who develop using agile methodologies can work well with clients who want to proceed with projects using waterfall methodologies. How many of you are business owner, CEO of the agency? Okay. How many of you are project manager, team leader, scrum master? Thank you. How many of you are freelance developer? Thank you very much. I did. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. So who am I? I'm Ken Taguchi. Yes, we are from Digital Circus. I'm a CEO of Digital Circus. I call myself ring leader because we have Circus in our company name. And I have attended several DrupalCon. This is my 6th time. And I actually used to live in Singapore 40 years ago. This is my 2nd time to visit Singapore after 40 years. We are Digital Circus, a Drupal agency in Japan with 50 developers, and we are the first and currently the only Drupal certified partner in Japan. So I'm going to talk about 4 things in this session. First, I will share my personal experience on how I came to this approach. Second, I will compare the concept of agile and waterfall development. Third, I will propose a way to promote agile development in cooperation with waterfall customers. Fourth, I will present an example of actual project as a case study. Premise. So what I'm going to talk about in this session is based on our business experience in Japan. You may come from Southeast Asia, you may come from America, you may come from Europe, and different countries and regions have different business rules. So some suggestions may not apply to your area. So you must interpret them into your region. And as you know, Japan is a conservative country. A lot of business people love waterfall, and even many development companies still love waterfall. So I'm from that kind of region. So background to proposing this session. First, I'm going to talk about our history, how we moved from waterfall to agile. 10 years ago, back in 2015, we are a waterfall development company with a bit of agile practice. We have 40% sales from Drupal. We have less than 20 people. So we were a typical small Drupal agency at the time. And at that time, I was struggling with how I can make my company grow. Because we are stuck under 20 people, sometimes we are 10, sometimes we are 15, but we cannot go more than 20 people. And there are always a heavy burden on project managers, including myself. We hire good people, but they quit, especially good project manager quit because there are too much workload on them always. And client pushes a lot of pressure to project manager, and manager forces development team. So manager and development team are always in a conflict. So we had a problem with the structure of the organization, I can say. So there was a turning point in DrupalCon Barcelona 2015. It was my first DrupalCon, and I attended the business summit. Have any of you attended business summit before? Business summit. Okay. Business Summit it's used to be held a day before DrupalCon starts. It's a group discussion for business leaders, CEOs, and where people split into several tables from 5 to 8 people and discuss business topics like how to promote business, how to hire good talent, and so on. It's a very good session, and it's a pity that we don't have that in DrupalCon Singapore. Anyway, I attended them, and I thought it was a good chance for me to ask other agency leaders about my concern. So in one table, I asked them, hey, my business is not getting bigger than 20 people. How can I scale it? And one guy in the table, he was from South America, answered to my question. Hey man, that's simple. You just scrum the whole company. And I didn't understand what you said. What do you mean by that, scrum the whole company? And he showed me one picture of Spotify model. A Spotify model is a case study from Spotify to accept agile methodology into whole organization. And she showed me the URL of the video and the article. So during the stay of Barcelona, I watched the video again and again, tried to understand the concept and the idea behind it, and tried to transform them into my company. So after coming back from Barcelona, on the first all-hands meeting, I declared to everyone in my team, hey, I learned a lesson in Barcelona. We should scrum the whole company. So let's start it from today. And everybody is like, what? What is our boss talking about? Is he insane or what? No? And so many of us didn't like the idea because they were not comfortable with change. I mean, they are human beings. They are afraid of change. But I insisted them to follow the new rule because I was very sure, confident that this was the way I should go. So since then, we have been building this hybrid model little by little. We develop internally using Scrum. We deliver to the client using Waterfall. So after building this model, we are able to take on large projects for enterprise customers. Our case studies in Drupal.org, like Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, Japan Airlines, Mitsui Chemicals, they are all huge Japanese company, large company enterprise. And without this model, we couldn't have done any of them. So this model is very simple, but powerful for us. So Agile versus Waterfall development. I'm going to talk about Agile development, especially Scrum, because we use Scrum internally. It's iterative development, always in same time frame. Usually it's between 1 to 4 weeks, same time frame, repeat and repeat. And it has autonomous development team of less than 10 people. And it has very simple practice. Sprint planning in the beginning of sprint, usually for 1 to 2 hours, and daily Scrum, 15 minutes stand up every day at the same time, at the same place, and retrospective at the end of sprint, discussing what was good in the sprint, what was bad in the sprint, and what we can do better in next sprint. So repeat this again and again. So why do we like Agile? Why do you like Agile? My answer is Agile development meets reality. I mean, reality is Agile. The future is always unpredictable. Customers change their requirements frequently. Projects are often delayed and need rescheduling. It's Agile. The reality is Agile. It's just a matter of you admit it or you do not admit it. And it also builds an autonomous team culture. From my experience, just doing Scrum changes the atmosphere of the company. Team members become more independent. They do not wait for the order from the project manager anymore, but try to find the task by themselves by serving their client. So for me, change was dramatic after we accept Scrum. So waterfall development. It requires precise planning and script plan change process. You must define time frame, budget, and deliverables first. You must complete the previous process to proceed to the next process. So you have to complete all the requirement tasks before you move to design phase, and you have to complete all the design tasks before you move to coding phase, and so on. So customers often like waterfall development because they want to determine budget and outcomes first so that it's easily approved within their organization. So I've seen many failed projects with this combination of waterfall customers and agile development agency. Waterfall customer complained to agency of their poor quality, lack of documentation, time-consuming process, and agile development agency complained to the client, requirements just increase and deadline remains the same. And everything that doesn't go according to the plan is blamed on us, you know? So how can both parties work well together? By our hybrid model, the customer proceeds with the project by Waterfall, and development agency proceeds with the project by Agile. And both parties are happy. So it's good. But how? So hybrid model. Our hybrid model has 4 simple principles: 3-month contract, WBS aligned with sprints, scope management, and minimum and sufficient documentation. 3-month contract. I always divide any lengthy project into 3-month increments and contract. For example, if the project is 12 months long, I divide it into 4 pieces of 3-month contract. First contract will be 3 months of discovery and design with prototyping. Next 3 months would be development contract. Next 3 months would be another development. The next 3 months will be data migration and finalization and site launch, something like this. But why I do it? Excuse me. Why I do this? Why I divide it into 3-month contract? First of all, it's easily accepted by Waterfall customers, because enterprise companies are accustomed to dividing their business operation into quotas. They have to announce their business performance every quarter, so they used to think in that way. And they can think of it as a multiple 3-month waterfall development. For example, first quarter, there's 3 months waterfall development. Second quarter, another 3 months of the waterfall development, something like this. And Agile development agency can have a good future outlook. We can focus on near future, 3 months later, not the distant future after 1 year. And we can establish a rhythm of development with a continuous 3-month cycle. It's very important to give your team to have a consistent same cycle of 3 months development, 3 months development, and go on. Same cycle, same routine, same time frame. And it reduces risk of cash flow because you are sure that you can invoice your client after 3 months, and after 3 months, the money will come to your bank account, so it can make your business stable. And also, if it doesn't work for both parties, they can resolve it after 3 months. I mean, it's a pity that the project don't go well, but it's much better to know it in 3 months rather than 1 year later. So when you start project, you can choose 2 types of contract: time and material contract or fixed price contract. And time and material contract, it's paid according to the hours you work. If you work 80 hours, you are paid for this 80 hours. So most of Agile development agency prefer this contract because they don't have to take a risk. If you work 80 hours, you can get paid 80 hours, no risk. But on the same reason, many enterprise customers prefer to fixed price contracts because the payments are fixed regardless of the number of hours worked. So if the project goes wrong, the development goes endless, you have to work more, and more, but price is same because the price is fixed in the contract. So customer doesn't have to, take a risk. And I've seen many Agile development companies reject fixed price contract and not take on project. If the fixed price contract is the only way to get on the project, they just leave because they don't want to take a risk. But we, digital Circus, are not afraid of accepting fixed price contract, so we have more business opportunities. The better you can take advantage of fixed price contract, the more business opportunities you will have, I think. So when I sign fixed price contract, I usually take care of 4 things. The contract could be very long, like 20 pages, 50 pages, sometimes 100 pages, but I only take care of 4 things: 3 months contract, warranty, compensation for damages, charges for delay. So 3 months contract, I've explained it already. You should stick to 3 months contract. It shouldn't be 2 months, it's too short. It shouldn't be 4 months, it's too long. So 3 months is a good length for both you and the client. So you should stick 3 months contract again, and again. Warranty. Fixed price contracts requires that bugs be repaired free of charge for a certain period of time after delivery. It's generally 1 year in Japan, but it could be 2 weeks in your country, it could be 2 years in your region. So it really depends on your region. But sometimes customers require very long warranties, like 5 years or 10 years. But from my experience, that's something you should negotiate, because if you negotiate, you can get it changed to more general time frame. Be careful not to make promise of long duration that you cannot keep, because we are working in the IT industry, and in this industry, you never know what's going to happen in 5 years. Maybe Drupal doesn't exist anymore. I mean, that's a bad job, but it can happen. So don't keep a long-term promise. Compensation for damages. Paying money for damages caused to clients by your own failure. So if you fail and if you damage client, you have to pay for that. And if nothing is negotiated, the amount is unlimited. So we try to cap the compensation for damages at the contract amount. In that case, if we fail, we lose the money we are supposed to get, but not more than that. So that's something we can accept as a risk. And I recommend you, once your company reaches a certain size, like 20 people, 30 people, you should consider purchasing liability insurance that covers your risk. So charges for delay. Late fees on a daily basis when projects are delayed. If the project is 1 day, you have to pay penalty for this 1 day. If the project is delayed for 1 week, you have to pay for penalty for 1 week. And as you know, as we know, project delays often. In many cases, delays are caused by both parties, not one or the other. So we had better remove this clause from the contract, because I do not want to fight against the customers by delay. I want to fight together with the customer to recover from the delay. But if clients say, no, we cannot remove this clause from the contract, then at least define the maximum amount of payment in the contract. In our case, it's 10% of contract amount. That's something acceptable for us. So, okay, we sign the contract, then the first day of project, client comes to you and asks, show me your WBS. Where's your WBS? And team says, oh, WBS, nightmare again. Huh? Some of you might don't like WBS. Some of you hate WBS. And some of you don't want to look at it in the rest of your life. I have a very bad experience of WBS too. But why you don't like WBS? Why I don't like WBS? Because things don't always go as planned. But once you create WBS, it's so difficult to change, because customers don't want to change WBS. If you have to change WBS, you have to say the explanation and the excuse and the recovery plan and so on. It takes time and effort. And sometimes conservative customers ignore the actual situation and pretend that they are following the WBS. I mean, they don't look at the reality. They look on WBS. As a result, both customers and agency become unable to face reality and lose honesty. They come blind and they talk about lie. They lie each other. I've seen a lot of projects like this, and it's very horrible. It's horrible. But I still think we should create WBS, because it can be a map of important milestone for development team. Without this map, you could become too focused on the current sprint and lose sight of the long-time goal. You focus on 2-week sprint, you focus on next 2-week sprint, then you lose eye to a milestone on the 6 months later, or you lose a goal for 1 year later. So you need a map to focus also on the future goal. So we need WBS. So what's the guideline for it? I keep 3 simple rules. Keep it as simple as possible. Align the duration of each task with the sprint. Manage user stories outside of WBS. First rule, keep it as simple as possible. Set major milestone tasks and gain common ground between the customer and development team. An example of major milestone would be a project kickoff, sprint, system test, user acceptance test, delivery, and so on. But try to keep simple so that everyone can understand important milestone deadline. Sometimes you or your client want to put a lot of information in WPS so that WPS gets bigger and looks more fancy, but try to keep it as simple as simple. Otherwise, nobody would want to look at it or nobody would understand it. And second rule, align the duration of each task with the sprint. You shouldn't make the duration of the task shorter than a sprint. If the sprint is 1 week, you keep the length of the task 1 week. If the sprint is 2 weeks, you keep the length of the task for 2 weeks. And we usually set either 1 or 2 weeks for each sprint, because in a lot of projects, the customer sets regular meeting every week or every other week. If the regular meeting with the client is every week, we set 1 week sprint. If regular meeting is every other week, we set 2 week sprint, so that we do sprint and get the results correct and report the client, then go back to the next sprint again. So it's important to align sprint and regular meeting cycle together to facilitate reporting easier. And do not create goals other than goal of the sprint. A goal in the middle of the sprint makes it difficult to operate Scrum. So the example on the left is good because the length of sprint tasks are same and end day of task and end day of sprint is same day. So it's easier for Scrum Master to control and operate Scrum. But the right example is bad because the end of the task is in the middle of sprint, so that if the task finish, the Scrum Master has to report to the client of that result in the middle of the sprint. That makes the Scrum much complicated. So rule number 3, manage user story outside of WBS. Only the development period of each sprint should be set in WBS, and user story itself are managed outside of WBS in the backlog, like in Jira or in spreadsheet or anywhere outside of WBS. Sometimes client asks you to put all the user stories into WBS. For example, if there are 50 user stories, client asks you to put all 50 rows in WBS so that it gets bigger. The clients are happy to see that, oh, we have this big WBS and we have this big complicated project. We are a good manager. But I always say no, we don't put user stories in WBS, because once we put user stories in WBS, user stories lose its flexibility to change priority on change assignment to sprint upon the client's request. Because once it's in WBS, it's hard to change because you have to go through all the changing process of WBS, and client doesn't want that, and we don't want that. So we try to change WBS as little as possible. So we stay away user stories from WBS so that it keeps flexibility to move the user story from sprint 1 to sprint 2. And so that kind of flexibility we try to keep. So scope management. This is a famous project management triangle: cost, time, scope. And when project is delayed, one of these needs to be changed. So you must change cost or time or scope to handle project to be on the right track. But it's not actually true, because you cannot change the cost, because changing cost means increasing the budget, but client says, no, we cannot increase the budget because it's fixed in the contract. And if you want to change time, it means extending the deadline, and the client says, no, we cannot change deadline because it's fixed in the contract. So the scope is the only variable you can change. So you gotta be good at managing a scope, which means reducing a user story. So when project is delayed, you need to reduce the scope of the project. So you should negotiate in advance with your customers which user stories they can give up when reducing scope. And it's too late to start negotiation after project is delayed, because customers are angry already because it's delayed. So you must negotiate when client gives you their first user stories. You look at the user stories with your client again and again to find what's the least important for them. Sometimes it could be a nice to have feature for administrator, It could be a feature that doesn't exist on the current site, and so on. You should be able to find some which is least important for your client. So documentation. Waterfall customers sometimes requires huge amount of documentation which you have never created before. And Agile development agency sometimes creates zero document, only Jira ticket which describe user stories. So there's a huge gap between customer expectation and outcome of development team. So this is famous Agile manifesto, and it says working software over comprehensive documentation. While there is a value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. So it says working software is more important than comprehensive documentation, even there is still value in documentation. So sometimes clients misunderstand or agency misunderstand that Agile means zero documentation, but that's not true. Agile doesn't say how much is adequate for documentation. But we have seen many Agile development projects, its documentation is only user stories. Now we think we need documentation because only looking at user stories doesn't give us a complete picture. I mean, without good document, it's difficult to understand the overall functionality and data structures. So we need document. But how much is enough? How much is adequate? Our answer is it allows developers to maintain design consistency. We cannot maintain design consistency without minimum and sufficient documentation. And also, it should be able to be maintained by support staff. It may be easy for developers to create documents. Okay, I create this document, I create this document, I create this, and after site launch, he leaves, and support staff comes, and he has to collect all the documents he made and try to understand, read it. But it's sometimes difficult to update it because it's so spread out and too much. So you must keep minimum and sufficient for support staff to easy to update it. So this is our standard documentation. Feature list, page layout, data structure, permission. Feature list is a list of features. It's nearly equal to user stories. Like this site has an event feature with event list and event page, and this site has a shopping cart and order form, something like that. And page layout is the element to be displayed on the page and their behavior. For example, this page have name field and email address and button, and if you click the button, it goes to blah blah. So it's nearly equal to wireframe, but we focus more on the feature. So data structure is a data definition of Drupal content type, taxonomy, media, fields, etc. And permission is a definition of Drupal permission for each role. So it's not much. It's not much, but we need this document before we start development. So case study. This is our case study, Fujifilm. They have large-scale multi-site Drupal multi-site comprised over 100 sites with 50 languages, Japan, America, Europe, Asia, Middle East. And we applied to Splash Award together with Fujifilm, and we are finalists in the corporate category. So please be there at 5:15 p.m. today. We will be there. And we developed this project using our model I described in this session, 3-month contract, WBS aligned with sprint, scope management, minimal and sufficient documentation. And it took us 1.5 years from kickoff to site launch. And since site launch, it's been past already 4 years, but we still continuing this process. We gave us a 3-month contract support service. We do 3-month development again and again, and still keep going on. So summary. Scrum allows organization to scale, transform the entire organization into an autonomous organization by running it with Scrum. Don't rely on one good manager to take charge of growth, but rather the entire development team. hybrid model. Agile development agency can collaborate on projects with waterfall customers by 4 simple principles. 3-month contract, WBS aligned with sprint, scope management, minimal and sufficient documentation. Thank you for listening. Questions? Yes.
Do you have a fixed amount of the whole contract, or which is still, I mean the contract amount?
Yes. You're asking if the project is 1 year, do we have a fixed price contract for this 1 year?
Right.
That's what you're asking? Yes. Yes and no. And as I talked, I divided into 3-month contract. So if it's 1 year, it's divided into 4 pieces of contract. But at the beginning of the project, we provide the client all these estimation, not only in the first contract, but we provide whole estimation. But we are sure for first contract, but we are not 100% sure for another 3 pieces of contract. But we try to keep the budget of the client. We try not to increase the budget because it's important for our waterfall client to keep the budget. So we try to control the scope. If if maybe second project, if it seems to go over the budget, we try to reduce the scope. We try to reduce the user stories so that that meets in budget. Another question? Please.
Do you have any more advice on how to negotiate those situations where you have to reduce scope? But how do you, thank you. Do you have any advice for situations where you have to negotiate scope or renegotiate scope with the client?
Okay. As I described, the best is you try to do that as early as possible, because it's good if the project goes well. You don't have to worry about anything. But if project goes worse and worse, it makes it more difficult to negotiate. So I try to negotiate it as early as possible, so in the beginning of the project. And also I try to break the user story. Like if there's one user story, I try to break it into a few pieces, so that maybe one user story has 3 pieces of story. Maybe only one is important, but other 2 stories are not so important. So dividing into 3 pieces, then you can postpone these 2 user stories after the site launch and only focus on 1 user story out of this. So I try to do that. Any other question?
In your WBS or sprint plan, at which point do you define the user stories? Because in my experience, we have no clients who were able to define user stories in a way that are constant and understandable. Do we have another sprint at the beginning for the user stories, or is this a constant process at the beginning of each sprint?
Are you asking I'm collecting user story at the beginning of the project only, or I collect user stories in each time, every 3 months? That's
yes.
Your question? I try to have a discovery phase in the beginning of a project. Try to collect all the user stories, important one and not important one, everything. I try to collect all of them so that I can figure out how big the project is. Otherwise, if you don't collect all the stories, you can't know how big the project is, and you cannot have the whole picture of the project. To get the image of whole picture and project size, I try to collect all the user stories. But also, if there are 100 stories, you can't discuss all 100 stories in 3 months, it's too much. So user, a client prioritize the stories, like A, B, C, and we try to focus on stories which is most important to them in these 3 months. So because we can discuss the B and C later, but we try to collect all the user stories as much as I can, and we discuss in each stories important, middle, not important in each phases. 3 months, 3 months, 3 months.
Thank you for the sharing. My question is more for the slide. WBS align the duration of each task with the sprint. So I feel this is more applicable for the new projects, but most of the time the clients have projects and the BAU running at the same time. So then that requires whenever something delivered, they need to deliver live the site immediately. If you have 2 weeks or 3 weeks of sprints, they cannot wait for 3 weeks. Maybe every week should have a delivery. So how to balance that?
Yes, that's a good point, I think. For the support project, we have to follow a different, something different methodologies. But we still do same approach. But as you described, and in support phase, you have to deliver as soon as possible if site is down or so. So in support phase, you usually have one release for 1 month. Every month we release, and so we keep this regular release cycle. But also support team need to add for this irregular release. That's something support team has to handle. So as you described, it's a bit different for team if it's a support project. Yes, my session is mainly for a new project. Yes. Any other question? Okay. Okay. Also, thank you for listening.